One of the things that I think is really interesting right now that we didn't expect coming from you is you're the CEO of a film company.
I am, yeah, based here in well, I won't say Dallas. People in Fort Worth aren't happy about that, but in the Dallas-Fort Worth area,
right,
in Flower Mound, Texas, about halfway between the two towns. And yeah, we was down here in Dallas working on a bunch of other projects, actually in the energy business. And a friend of mine was involved in a company, an investor in a company that was called Echolight Studios, whose mission was to make films, real good quality, inspirational films that have faith as a key component in the film. And to me, that making positive, uplifting, inspiring content that was appropriate for families had a real appeal to me. Infusing a real ounce of, a heavy dose of quality into those productions was really important to me, and having them focus on a vital role that faith plays in people's lives. Hollywood does a lot of good inspirational stories. There's no question about it, but a lot of them aren't necessarily family friendly. Number one, and number two, almost none of them deal with the subject of faith. And I think for too long in this country, we've sort of allowed faith to be sort of ghettoized.
Right.
It's okay to be a person of faith if that's your thing, but keep it in the church. We don't really want to see it in schools. We don't want to see it in the theater. We don't want to see it anywhere other than you're okay as long as you just and that the result of that is now you're seeing a much more hostile attitude toward faith everywhere, where people are saying you can't put a nativity scene up, or you can't, express your religious convictions when it comes to buying health insurance. And so faith is being more and more ghettoized as a result of us allowing it to be put in the ghetto. And one of the areas that was put in the ghetto is in film. I mean, you really can't think about, faith is an important thing in the vast majority of people's lives here in America. But how many films come out of Hollywood that have anything to do with faith? How many big productions, other than sort of biblical stories, which are sort of safe ground because they're historical in nature? But as far as the role that faith plays in the world today and in the lives of people today, you really don't see much of that. And what you do see, unfortunately, doesn't come out of Hollywood. It comes out of the independent film market, and it's not particularly well made. And so this I saw was an opportunity to do something that could lift up an industry and take faith-oriented films out of the ghetto.
Good. Well, and one of those things that's making a great turn, I believe, is Mark Burnett's company.
Yeah.
Which brought out the Bible, and now they have Son of God coming out. And that's got to be pretty exciting for you.
Yeah, there's some really good, talented people who are getting into this space. I'm encouraged by that. I don't really see Mark Burnett or anybody else in this business as competition. I see them as
Right.
as folks who are side by side pushing this very important issue out there before the American public. And so, no, it's a good thing that we're seeing really good and talented people. We're working on some films right now. In fact, I spent a couple hours today, talking to folks in a script meeting about our next film. And these are folks from the industry. I mean, these aren't Christian filmmakers. These are folks who are really good filmmakers, really good screenwriters, who understand that this is an important genre of film, that we have to make really good, high quality products. And if we want to have an impact, you want to be able to speak not just to the ghetto, but you want to speak to everybody. And that's what we're hoping to do.
What have you learned? What's been the most interesting thing that you've learned about the movie business?
Oh my goodness. Well, it's
quite different.
It's a very different. I mean, it's saying it's like a fire hose. Just learning everything about the business side of movies and how they operate, and that a theatrical release, while for most movies is not necessarily, particularly most independent movies, is not necessarily where you shoot for to make the film economically successful. I mean, it's very, very difficult for a small independent movie to do particularly well, that you really use the theatrical release as an opportunity to get publicity and drive sales down the road for DVD and digital, and to get your notoriety. But it's hard unless you have big budgets to be able to get a big box office. And the exception to that is that if you have if you happen to have a great movie that has word of mouth, and we were very fortunate at Christmas Candle that we had good word of mouth for a few weeks, and we were able to get a solid showing at the box office, and hopefully the next time we'll get a little better at it. We'll get better at it the next time, and when I was going through this, I always used to say to folks when I was dealing with an issue and I was in the Senate or in politics, hey guys, this isn't my first rodeo. Well, this was my first rodeo, and so we learned a few things, and I think we'll be better the next time around.
Good. Well, can you talk about some of the future film projects that you have?
Yeah, we have a film that will be coming out on DVD. It's called Seasons of Grey, which is, you mentioned Mark Burnett and the Bible series. This is a story based on the Old Testament Joseph story, and it's shot in modern times. So it's a modern day Joseph story shot in Dallas, Texas, and it's a great little film that really is aimed right at the heart of what Christ calls us to do, which is in the Joseph story is to forgive, right, and persevere, and then forgive as a real blessing in his life, and so that we're excited about that. That's coming out in January. We're just about to sign a deal, which I don't think we can publicly talk about yet, but just about to sign a deal with another movie with the Hallmark Channel, and so we're excited about that. It'll be our first television premiered movie, and that'll be out this spring. And then we have another movie that we've already shot that deals with a great, inspiring story of a family dealing with a young man with cancer and his journey. He's a basketball player, and so it's sort of a sports basketball movie. That's probably later this year. And as I mentioned before, we're in pre-production on a movie that's really, it's sort of a different twist, that we'll be filming a big chunk of it in Russia. So we're doing all sorts of really interesting projects.
Good. Well, and you mentioned sports, and of course, Drew Pearson shows a sports show. So I know, are you a big sports fan? And if so,
I am a big. And here's the interesting thing that Drew should know, that at the time that, and this I hate to admit this, but when I was a kid, I was a Cowboys fan.
Oh, well, that's not terrible.
Well, I hate to admit this because I'm a Steeler fan now. I'm a Pittsburgh guy. But I hate to admit this. I don't hate to admit it on this show, but I'm going to catch heck in Pittsburgh by admitting this. But it's true. When I was a kid, I mean, there were very few Steeler fans in the 1960s. I mean, they just didn't exist. And, Steelers played at the old Pitt Stadium, and, quarter of the stadium was full. I mean, there wasn't much to cheer about if you were a Steeler fan. And so I became at the time a Tom Landry, Dandy Don, and then Roger Staubach sort of cemented it for me. And I was a huge Roger Staubach fan just personally, and so I became a Cowboy fan, and it created quite a conflict when the Steelers got good, and so I sort of had to struggle rooting for the Steelers, and then they ended up playing in the Super Bowls. That was painful. For me to be involved in those, but thankfully, the '80s came around, and Hollywood Henderson came around, and that made things easier to leave the Cowboys and become a Steeler fan full bore. Well, but Drew Pearson was someone who I followed back in the day, and rooted for him for many a touchdown.
Yeah, absolutely, including the Hail Mary pass.
The Hail Mary pass, absolutely. I remember it very well.
Yeah, and of course, so Roger threw that to Drew. And,
I do remember that.
And the Hail Mary.
Minnesota Vikings.
Yes, and the Hail Mary is actually...
pretty good. You didn't think I'd get that, did you?
It's a great...
I was a true fan, I have to admit.
I know, that's great. Well, and it's
Number
become
88,
a pop culture term.
Oh, it is.
And so we've been asking everybody their Hail Mary moment, which is where they just kind of had to go for it. Didn't look like it was going to work out, but it did.
Well, I think Iowa would be. Well, no, I'll tell you what. The Hail Mary moment for me during the campaign was not Iowa. That was a novena. I mean, I was just day in, day out. If you're Catholic, you get that. And if the Hail Mary pass for us was going to Colorado, Minnesota, and Missouri.